Hello and welcome to the February episode of the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast. My name is Leslie and this is a knitting, crochet, weaving, all kind of yarn craft podcast recorded on the south coast of England. You're very welcome. Thank you so much for being here. If you're looking for me anywhere else, Instagram, Ravelry, anywhere like that, I will be found as knittingordeath. And just a huge thank you to everyone who has been part of this community and has commented on previous podcasts. I record throughout the month in bits and then put together a podcast which I upload on the last weekend of the month. This is basically because I don't have a huge amount of content. Like most of us, I have a full-time job and my knitting time is limited, so I don't have enough content to do a more frequent podcast than that on a general basis. So you'll see bits of me recorded here in my office / craft room, which is where the yarn lives. And if you're wondering why it's called Not Quite Enough Yarn, when I clearly have yarn and another cupboard there, which you can just see the edge of, it's because I very rarely have enough to have a complete sweater quantity of one item, because I tend to buy yarn because it's like, ooh, pretty, and don't actually think through what I'm going to do with it. So that's the reason for the name of the podcast, and that actually has led to some real generosity. Maria, who goes to the knitting group that I attend, is an absolute sweetheart. A call was put out by one of our members asking us to sort out any scraps of yarn we have for a friend of hers who does a charity thing. I think it's working with older people, and she was after scraps of yarn. So we all trolled up with our bags of oddballs of stuff that scraps left over from a project, bits of things that we weren't going to use. And Maria kindly gave me this. And this is, I think it's 11 balls of, no, it might be more than that, 13 balls I think, of Patterns Colourwork Aran. And she gave it to me because I never have enough yarn. Thank you so much, Maria, that is so kind. This is lovely stuff. It's not something I've worked with before. I love the colours, this sort of purple into dark green. Really, really nice. It's 65% acrylic, 25% new wool, 25% new wool, and 10% polyamide. It's their shade number 85. And that's kind of all I know. Obviously, I've been having a look on Ravelry to see what to make. Got a few ideas. It does feel really nice and soft. I like the feel of it very much. It's, I'll try and get that focused in if I can. If I take my head out of it, it might focus in better. I'll cover my face. No, I just look really odd. It's a chain plied yarn. Is that going to focus? My head, as ever, is the problem here. Yeah, so really nice feel to it, and enough for a garment. So thank you so much, Maria. I really do appreciate it. Very, very kind. Right, I'm trying a new camera angle in the car, so hopefully I'm looking at you and not staring off into the middle distance in a thoughtful manner. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone who responded to the discussion on racism, or my comments on it rather, in the last podcast. I normally get a few thumbs down. I got a few more last month. That's fine. I didn't get any feedback to suggest that people were unhappy either because they didn't agree with me or because they felt it wasn't an appropriate forum for that kind of discussion. So I don't know what in particular they were unhappy about. May have been nothing to do with that section of the podcast. It could be, they didn't like my fluffy blankets. I've no idea because they didn't tell me. Yeah, I mean, I can't respond to that kind of reaction because I don't know what it is. So if you have a problem with something I'm doing, please speak to me, and you can message me privately if you'd like to.
And yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. So most people, those who responded positively, so I'm grateful for that. And that's not why I did it, but I am grateful for it. And I'm also grateful to those who got in contact privately, some to slightly disagree with the points I'd raised, or to put an alternative point of view, and that's something that we've discussed, and some to reach out and share some of their experiences with me. And I am extremely grateful to anyone who gets in contact, who takes the time, so thank you very much. I did say in the last podcast that I'm not looking for this to become a recurring theme throughout the monthly episodes, and that does apply, partly because if I'm making a pattern that's from a designer who's a person of colour, I'm just going to say this is this pattern by this person. I'm not looking to big up myself for that. I'll have chosen it because I like the pattern, and to highlight the pattern because I think it's a good quality thing, not some kind of tokenism. So you hopefully won't be seeing that from me. But I think there is also a fear that the conversation has got very big very quickly, and it won't be long before there is a sense of, oh, well, we've all said how lovely we all are, so let's just go back to knitting and giveaways and knit-alongs and that. And yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, I'm going to do those things, but I would not want it thought that I had somehow forgotten the issue of representation and structural racism. I wouldn't want it to be thought, and I realise I'm making this about me, but it is my podcast, so I'm just explaining my point of view. I wouldn't want it to be thought that because I've read one book I think I know it all, or any of those things. I am going to continue doing what I started to do last month, which is listen, read, understand better, think about what I'm saying, think differently, and just try and get a handle on something that had been completely unknown to me. So I'm going to carry on doing that. I'm not going to make a big thing about it because that's something that I just need to do, in the same way that, I don't tell you what I've had for breakfast every morning. They're just things that you need to do. But if I don't make a big thing about representation, diversity, any of the stuff, please don't think that I've forgotten, or that I don't care, because neither of those would be accurate.
This month I'm pretty monogamous in my projects. There's a baby item that I'm working on, which I'll show you as we go through the month. I'm actually recording this introduction on the 10th, so I'm a little way into it already, and I've already recorded the piece where I show you what a complete mess up I made and had to unpick half of it. A lesson for us all there, I feel. But the other thing is that I'm going to Unravel this month, so the end of this podcast will be even more stash acquisition. Not just lovely things that lovely people have given me, but stuff I've bought. This is the big splurge I'm allowing myself. I have been on a yarn diet for about 14 months, and my hope is to get my quantities of yarn down to 2 cupboards. And now I've told you there are 3 cupboards here. I've got stuff in boxes as well because I have so much, and I really would like to contain it down to 2 cupboards. But I am getting a bit of withdrawal symptoms for not buying yarn, because I like yarn, and buying yarn is a hobby in itself. So there will be stash acquisition later in the month, right at the end of this podcast, of the stuff I've bought at Unravel. So looking forward to that. The other big thing going on, and this is going to go on all year, is the craft along, make along, knit along that I'm hosting with the lovely Barbara from the Flame and Fibre podcast. And this is a use your stash craft along. So I'll put the hashtag on the screen. And the rules are very simple. The stash the yarn had to be in your possession as at the end of 2018, and the project has to be started after, or on or after, 1st of January 19. So the hope is to shop from stash, get the imaginative juices flowing and see what can be created. Lots of lovely projects already. To take part in the competition, you need to be a member of our relative groups. So Barbara has the Flame and Fibre podcast group. I have the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast group. Become a member. Just join. You don't have to kind of do the whole introduce yourself thing. You're more than welcome to, and we'd love to hear from you, but just be a member of the group. And there are 2 threads in each group. There's a finished object thread, and please, 1 post per object. So if you make 4 items in a month, 4 different posts. It just makes it easier for us to draw from. So 1 post per object, and we'll be doing draws from that. And also there's a chatter thread, and you don't have to post pictures for that. You could just be commenting on someone else's post. Oh, that yarn's gorgeous, whatever it is we want to say, and we'll be drawing from those as well. We're going to do some periodic prize giving during the year, and then a massive one at the end of the year. Well, I say massive, I shouldn't big it up more than it is. There'll be a larger prize giveaway at the end of the year. Also, on the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast, I will be doing a separate draw, and that is for pieces that use more than 1 yarn, because I quite often put different yarns together, and I'm looking forward to see what you do and how you combine yarns as well. So I will be doing a separate draw for that, in addition to the draws being done on both podcasts, and you are very much encouraged to enter in both groups. Double dipping, very much encouraged, and anything else that you're taking part in. If it's another stash knit along from another podcaster or another organisation, if it's a new technique, if it's a knit along that you're doing but you're using yarn from stash and you're making it this year, by all means enter it. That's positively encouraged. The hope is just to get people enjoying their craft, using what they've got. And the other thing I must say is, although to enter this craft along it has to be stash you owned as at the end of 2018, that doesn't mean you can't buy stash. You're not precluded from entering if we find out you've been shopping. The hope is to make room for more stash, if that's what you want to do with the space that you create. So please don't feel that we're anti-shopping, anti-dyers, anti-new yarn. Not at all. This is just a bit of a, almost like a palette cleansing exercise. Let's go through, see what we've got, use it, and then make room for lots of lovely new things. Let's see how the month pans out. Just one last thing about the knit along, which is rather exciting. I will be drawing the first of the quarterly prizes next month, and here is a beautiful prize. Now, a lady called Amy in America, I'm not going to be any more specific than that because she might not want me to say where she lives, but Amy in America, so I'm sure you know her, got in touch and said, would I like a giveaway prize? Now, someone else had also said that, you know, they make project bags, and it is so kind of anyone. And the other person, I said to Amy as well, well, that's really kind, but I don't want you to be out of pocket. And she said, well, I'm making it anyway, so, you know. So thank you so much. If anyone does ever offer me a prize and I seem to be a bit kind of, well, that's really kind, but I don't want to put you out, it is really kind and I'm genuinely grateful, and by all means send it on if you want to. I just lack social skills and I genuinely don't want anyone else to be out of pocket through a giveaway that I'm doing. But if it's something you really want to do, I'm beyond grateful. Thank you so much. So Amy, who has made this beautiful bag, it is really well made. Lovely lining, there's some teas, got a handle, got a handmade with love label, and keeping the theme that I know so well, she made it with these scraps of fabric because there wasn't quite enough for the whole thing. Do you see what she did there? So it is absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much, Amy, and a lucky person will win this bag. Now I am also a very lucky person because she made me one too, and it's got a poodle on it. As you all know, my little woofer is a poodle cross, and she put in some treats from her poodle because she has one too, to mine. And Amy also very kindly put in a couple of little bits of double knitting for me to add to my northeasterly blanket. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, beautifully made. And look at the poodle. I'm beyond, I can't. Thank you so much. That is so very, very kind. And I will use it and be grateful every time I do. So thank you very much. For those of you entering the giveaway or thinking of entering, I will put the little eye thing up at the top here to link to the video that I did, very short one, in January when the giveaway was launched, so that you can see what the rules and regs are. But it's all very simple and straightforward, and the first draw will be next month at the end of March for the for the end of March podcast for the first quarter. So this one's mine. I'm having this one, but this one's yours, and it is beautiful and just absolutely, like I say, so wonderfully made. Lovely lining, really nice feel to it, handle. So some lucky person will be drawn to win this. And again, thank you so much, Amy. I am beyond thrilled, so thank you. It's so exciting. Well, I'm excited. I have mentioned, moving on to actual knitting content of mine, I mentioned that I've been very monogamous this month, and it's been a baby project. Now, ordinarily, and my initial plan was to make a sleep sack, and this is a pattern by Jeannie Chin that I got in a giveaway with Let's Knit magazine some time ago, but I think it's been published in other magazines and books as well. And I've made several sleep sacks, but I don't think I've ever actually just followed that pattern. What I've done is reverse engineered it. So worked out the size of all the component parts, worked out my gauge, and hopefully credited this every time because it is her design, it's her structure, but I've just adapted it for whatever I'm using to make the thing with. So I've done a few of those. I'll put some pictures up. I did one with some bunny rabbits on, some in different colours. So my plan was to make a sleep sack. Now this is the baby for whom I made the brown onesie sleeper all-in-one thing, long johns, last month. The baby's dad is someone I know through my work, and he's an illustrator, and inspired partly by someone I know called Sally, who is on Pom Pom Designs, and I'll put a link to her Etsy shop. Sally makes beautiful items. They're machine knitted, but they will be maps. So it might be the map where you're, the state or the county where your baby is born, or they've got text on them. She does some really lovely things, and I thought it would be a nice thing, inspired by that thought that's been percolating away, thinking it would be great to make a sleep sack which has one of the baby's dad's designs on. So that was the initial plan. Now, all of my knitting is an exercise in adaptation, as we know, and the adaptation continues. So I took one of his designs, and I had a good search through, because there are lots of things to consider here. The main one being, can I make it into a knitting, a picture suitable for knitting? Because you basically got to pixelate it. And a lot of his designs, they have shading drawn in, which then means I would need another shade of yarn slightly darker. So if I've got something that's pink, for example, and then he's shaded to give a three-dimensional effect, I need a slightly darker shade of pink for that shading, just as an example. So that was then restricting which of his designs I could do. There are some that I felt wouldn't really be suitable for a baby blanket. So it was then working out which ones to go with. So I'm going to put a picture on screen here of the one that I decided. And this is his steam-powered mantle clock. And there is some software, and I'll put the link in the notes down below, in the notes down below. Why I feel the need to say that twice, I don't know. It's a site that you could go on, upload a picture, and it will put it into a graph form for you. Now, it's a really useful bit of kit, and it's one I've used very frequently. My big caveat on that is make sure you have permission for the picture that you're using. Because, you know, it would be shocking if, for example, I were to breach the copyright of the Disney Corporation by doing, excuse me, Winnie the Pooh or Eeyore, or whichever corporation owns Stewie from Family Guy. You know, I wouldn't dream of in breaching their intellectual copyright. Of course. Moving on. So, put Nick's picture through that software. What it does, you have some choices when you put the picture through it, but what it will do is it won't put it into squares. It will allow for the fact that normally knitting stitches are slightly taller than they are wide. So far, so good. So it came up, and excuse the scribbles, but basically it came up with this picture. Now the purple shows how far I knitted on the first draft of this. And I got to there, so I'm halfway through the clock, and I realised that what I had was a very flat semicircle. Now I did a lovely video on this and then deleted it, so apologies for that, but I then checked my gauge. You know, that basic thing that you normally do when you start. And my stitches were actually wider than they are tall. Very slightly, but wider than they are tall. I tried to just add a few rows in, but it was making it too square on the sides, too straight on the sides for something that's meant to be predominantly round. So that was frustrating because I had to rip it back. I then ran through the software again, and although it looks a very similar picture, it is actually allowed for the fact that the stitches are wider than they are tall. Now what this software does is gives a fairly literal representation. I then had to go through and simplify this a little. And what I did, and you can see some red lines through here, these were my these were my lines to show one colour to the next. I just wanted to make it a little simpler. I am trying to replicate the design, but as you're doing it in a knitted form, you do have to simplify it a little. I feel as if I'm making this description overcomplicated, but basically did the picture on graph. If you don't want to use the software, you can always just print your picture on graph paper and do it that way, and that's what I used to do. That's right, the dog's just scratching at the door. Hi, Dee. Oh, looks like we're going to have a co-host. Hello. Do you want to come and say hello to these lovely people? Oh, no. Come on then. Okay, moving on. It's later, dude. Sorry about that interlude. Yeah, so you can print it onto graph paper and do it that way. But either way, you probably will need to go through and just clarify, bless you. Oh, it's all going on here today, isn't it? Just clarify for yourself where one colour starts and the next stops. It just makes it easier when you're working it. The other thing I did, although it was a hand-drawn illustration that the baby daddy, I don't know why I said it like that, had done, I wanted the two sides kind of symmetrical. It just made it easier from a knitting point of view. So once I'd done that, I could then knit down. As I knitted down, I realised that what I was making was actually too big to be a sleep sack, because my idea was initially that the motif would just be in the front of the sack here and the rest would be plain. What I was making was turning out pretty sizable, so I haven't gone down that route. Instead, I've made a blanket, because obviously blankets are all I'm making this year, it would appear. So, so that's where we are so far. Now, what I haven't done is put a lot of the detailing in. I did this as intarsia, and I haven't put in the hands, the little background colour between the two kind of pillars here, the 12 at the top. I'm going to Swiss darn or duplicate stitch those. Intarsia was working for the edge stitches, for large kind of banks of stitches, but I didn't want to then start stranding and altering the tension. So at the moment I have this, a blank clock face. Now in terms of bobbins, I know that there is a way of doing this very clever little twist it around your fingers, make a little butterfly. Yeah, I've never been able to do that. I've tried, it hasn't worked. But a couple of years ago I tried Kamihimo braiding and came across these silicone bobbins, and you just wind the yarn on, fold them over, and they are great because they hold their place, and when you need more yarn you just pull them down. Obviously these aren't going to work for great big chunks of yarn, you know, when you've got large areas, but for the outside colours that where I've only got kind of half a dozen stitches in a row, they were perfect. So I used those. This is where we're at so far. These are the ends I've got to weave in. Hurrah! And obviously the whole thing needs blocking, and I need to duplicate stitch the detailing on. Once I'd finished the main motif, I then just carried on knitting down at the bottom, picked up stitches at the side, and just made it so that it was a cot-size blanket. Decided just to put in a few of the colours just to kind of tie it all together. This will look much better when it's blocked, but I'm showing you kind of in stages. And this is where we're at so far. The yarn is various stuff. The main colour, this kind of pale grey, is Bliss Rialto DK, which is a superwash merino. The brown is the Jarol Heritage, which is the same as I used for the sleep suit. The grey is Sirdar Snuggly. I'm not sure what this cream is. I'm guessing it's double knitting acrylic because it's in the stash and unlabelled, so that's what I'm working on. The gold was left over from another project. So yeah, just kind of scraps of stuff to make it all up. So when you next see this, I will have duplicate stitched or Swiss darned in the detailing, tidied up the ends and blocked it, so you will see the whole thing kind of in its wonderful glory before I pass it over to the parents-to-be. Baby's due early March. I thought it was end of February, but it's early March, so I have a little bit of time, but I'd like to get it to them before this goes up, because I'm not sure if Mum-to-be watches the podcast or not. I think she has done in the past, so no spoilers. You'll have this in your mitts before the rest of the world sees it. So this has been my adaptation of everything. So adaptation of a picture into a knitted design. I then realised it was far too big to make a sleep sack, so I made it a blanket. The whole thing has been, I like to think, organically growing but the alternative explanation is made up as I've gone along, and to be honest, both would apply. I wouldn't object to either description. Prefer the first one, but I'm not unrealistic about this. So onwards. Now whilst I'm here, I have some thank yous, and firstly, Yarning with Mimi mentioned me on her podcast, so thank you very much for that, and by all means go and check her out. I'll put her link in the whatever that is. Also, a big thank you to Antoinette, who sent me a wonderful selection of things connected with her local Women's Institute. Now, Antoinette is in New Brunswick in Canada, Deer Island, and yay, thank you so much. So there are flags, there are badges, there are magnets, there's stickers, there's a painted shell, and there's this really lovely mug with her WI logo on it. So thank you so much, Antoinette. This actually came through just after I'd finished recording the January episode, so apologies. I mean, I've contacted her by email, but apologies, it's been a while before I've acknowledged these things on the podcast. But thank you so much. That is really very kind of you. Don't know what else to say. I'm just so grateful. Thank you. I said next time you saw the blanket, it would have the stitching on it and be blocked. And there it be. So I've kept it fairly simple, possibly even a little uneven. Just did some duplicate stitch between the pillars, and just an embroidery chain stitch and a little bit of kind of satin stitch there for the hands of the clock. And I really hope that they like it. I especially hope they don't sue me under intellectual property laws. I don't think they will. Hopefully. It's been an interesting exercise. The whole thing has been, whether that's been choosing which illustration to make. It's thinking about what can be pixelated, but also in my case it's thinking about what I've got yarn for, because I'm using up stash and I wanted to be able to use something that I had already but still adapt the illustration. So I'm fairly pleased with how it's gone. I mean, it's not perfect, nothing ever is, but I hope that they appreciate the idea behind it, and that basically I just hope it keeps baby warm. The yarn, being superwash merino, is lovely and soft, and yeah, should make a nice cosy blanket for a little man when he comes along. Hello lovely people, it's Saturday the 23rd, the morning after the day before, as yesterday was Unravel, and here is some footage of our day.
Hello! Hello! This is Denise from Knitting Group, and I don't know who I am, but we're on our way to Unravel and we're very excited. Now, am I right in thinking you've not been to a yarn festival before?
Never.
Oh my god! The yarn! We've got the sat-nav. We've got wine gums. We've got Coke Zero. In the words of the Blues Brothers, we're on a mission from God.
Well, it's gone 2 o'clock. We've stopped for lunch. Denise is admiring her yarn haul. This fabulous bag contains a yarn bowl. And look, tea. What more could girls want? Thank you to everyone who came up and said hello. And a thank you also to Knitting Lil, who I didn't get to see. She did say on Instagram that she heard me rather than saw me, which kind of makes sense, although I'm fairly easy to spot as well. Now, it's possible that I was on my knees at this point because the Uppingham Yarns stall had some cones of yarn, which I'll show you in a sec, and they were at ground level, so I was on my knees. Or as I said, it's not the first time I've been on my knees for yarn. I'll leave that there. But the lovely Knitting Lil left a little something for me at Amy Florence's stranded stand, and they are these beautiful little stitch markers. I hope you can see those okay. So we have sheep, and we have a little kitty cat. So thank you so much, Laura. That is very, very much appreciated. That's great, thank you. Yeah, a few folks came up and said hello, so thank you very much to them. Lovely to meet people. Thank you for letting me hug you. Apologies if that was traumatic, but I did warn you I'm a hugger. And just a really lovely day. Great selection of vendors there. Yeah, really great. So I will show you my haul, and I'm going to start off with the stuff you can't knit with. But I got myself a pencil, and if you can't read that, it says Unravel, a knit load of ideas. So I've got a pencil. I also got a badge. So onto the yarns, in no particular order. I spent far too much money. Also, when I came home, the latest Pom-Pom Quarterly had arrived, so all the knitting things yesterday. But I'm going to concentrate on the yarns first of all. Some of these were dyers I've known, some of them yarns I've had before, and some people I'd not come across before, including this first one from Dusty Dimples Yarn. Absolutely beautiful selection of yarns there. And this is called Volleyball. It's a sock yarn, 75% merino, 25% nylon. Now you'll notice quite a bright pink in here, and that's coming up fairly accurately on screen. There are also speckles, some other colours, so really lovely. You'll notice a lot of bright pink in this. I was having a bright pink day yesterday, I'm not quite sure why, but loving it, loving it, loving it. So then on to Wonderland yarns, and this is, doesn't actually say, it feels like a kind of DK weight. It says US needles 4 to 6. Not entirely sure what that is, I should know. Oh, it's sport weight, there we go. Land of Wonders colourways, so lots of little skeins joined together, really lovely colours. I can see this being a shawl using the colours in this order. So what's the yarn composition? It doesn't say. Oh, 100% superwash merino. Sorry, while you've been looking at the label, I've been looking at the back of the label. So yeah, really lovely colours. It's all about the colours. Wool Kitchen, I bought a couple of skeins from them. Stuff won't come out of the bag in order, but this is Cosmic Gin, or GM, Dark D2. And again, there's that pink. You'll see a lot of similar kind of dye patterns. Yes, I was kind of going through a phase, because here's one from Easy Knits. Now this is a DK yarn. Oh, I forgot to tell you what the Wool Kitchen is. This is 4-ply weight, so fingering weight, 75% superwash Blueface Leicester, 25% nylon. This is DK 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. Lovely colours. So again, that pink, but we've got purple, green, we've got some yellow in there as well. Definitely going to be a hat. This is called Bounteous Flash. Loving it. Bought a couple of cones. I said upping in yarns, I was on the floor. This is my attempt at sensible purchasing for today, for the day rather, because I bought a couple of cones that I could then use with my single skeins. So I've got two of these. The first is this grey, which is a stone colourway. It is 500 grams of 4-ply weight, 1800 metres, and it is superwash wool. So, loving that. Just says pure new wool. It says merino blend on the front, but nowhere does it say how much is merino, how much is other wool, but it's got a nice feel to it. I've used this stuff before, it's all good. So that was grey, and the other one is this blue colour, which is their colourway slate blue. So good old King Cole yarns, 500 grams, 1800 metres, machine washable, 100% wool / merino. So a nice sensible colour that I can put with some of the other things that I already have. Now the next one, Sandy, who I met and we happened to be at the same booth, said, oh, I know what that's for. This is a drumming colour. This will definitely be something for drumming. I'm thinking of a bandana style cowl or shawl. I have seen a pattern. I'm also wondering about entrelac. I'm going to see how it knits up. But look at the black and red. That is fabulous. So that's a section 5 yarn. And this is Easy Knits, Deeply Wicked, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 4-ply / fingering weight in the colour Dracul. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Oh, I had such a lovely day. Another wool kitchen yarn, and again we've got these colours, much more subtle this one, in amongst the grey, and actually this will go quite nicely with the slate. So you've got some sort of speckly cream in there. Now I'm not sure if this is tetrachromia, metrochromia, hopefully that will focus. That's it. But that's the colourway there. And you can also see from that label, 75% blue face Leicester again, 25% nylon. Now I went to see Amy from Stranded, and you can't walk away without anything, can you? So this is her 72% kid mohair, 28% silk lace weight in her nougat, or as we used to call it, nugget colourway. 420 metres, and just such a pretty selection of colours. Still in the pink palette, do we notice? Also pink, but also a bit of red, bit of lilac, bit of goodness knows what else. This was a bargain. This is from the Loveliest Yarn Co. And it's her lovely blue face sock, so 75% superwash blue face Leicester and 25% nylon. 100 grams, 4-ply sock weight, 425 metres. Now these were an absolute bargain. These were in her bargain bin, and when we bought them, she said these were her first kind of batch of dyes, or you know, an early batch of dyeing, so she was selling them off at a reduced price, but fabulous colours, coming up quite nicely on the camera, so looking forward to using that. It hasn't stopped yet. More mohair. This is from Skein Queen, and this is 72% kid mohair, 28% silk, 420 metres for 50 grams, and it is their Heavenly Nightmare colourway. And you can see we've got these pops of stronger colour, so we've got a kind of bluey purple in there, and oh look, bright pink. I was really into the toxic pinks yesterday, and I don't regret it at all. More Easy Knits yarn. I love the strength of their colours. They are just amazing. This is their flash yarn in the berry sour colourway. 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 4-ply fingering weight, 425 metres for 100 grams, and just, I mean, the purple itself is fabulous, but then when you see those neons with it, it's just a real kind of pop of colour. And then I surprised myself, and as I described it to Amy, I'm going to go over to the dark side. I have never been a spinner. I have tried a bit of spinning once, just very briefly with Jo from Lime Green Jelly, Lime Green Welly, and it was a very kind of rushed affair. We were doing a demonstration, I was knitting, she was spinning, and I didn't get on with it, and I just thought, no, I haven't got the dexterity for that. And also I thought, do I need something that's going to make me more yarn? Because although I've not quite enough yarn, I have far too much yarn. Even more now, sorry not sorry. But the lovely ladies from Spin City were there, and they said, who'd like to have a go? Oh, go on then. So I had a quick go at drop spindle spinning, and found it easier than I was expecting. So I bought myself a braid of fibre. And I couldn't even tell you what this is, apart from very pretty and with bright pink in it. So it's lovely fibre. Spinning, I can't see taking over from any other craft that I do, but it was inevitable that this day would come and I will spin. I will try spinning. So I just bought a braid. They had some beautiful bats there, just everything was gorgeous. So that is my stash acquisition from Unravel. And that's it for this year in terms of the yarn that I'm buying. Given what I spent, it's probably just as well. But had a really lovely day. It's a great venue, a well curated festival, good selection of dyers and makers. It's quite an unusual building. Lots of different kind of little rooms and a couple of bigger rooms. It's an old industrial building that's now a sort of community space, an exhibition centre and theatre and stuff like that. Oh, excuse me. Must be the fibre, the fumes are getting to me. But really lovely day, quite busy to start off with. Parking was quite difficult. We thought being the Friday rather than the weekend it would be quieter. But we were kind of in our third car park before we found a space, and lots of people there, although it did quieten out during the day. And just lovely. Met some great people, found some great yarns. Could have bought 10 times that amount had we not got tired and skint, frankly. But we had a great day. So yeah, thanks to everyone involved in Unravel. Really lovely event. And yeah, thanks to everyone, really grateful. I think, lovely people, that's going to be it for this month's podcast. I'm sure there's stuff I've forgotten. If there has, I'll try and remember it for next month. But big thank you to everyone who watches, who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who does all of the button pressing. Thank you also to anyone who's taking part in the knit along. There have been some fabulous projects and I look forward to seeing more. I've added an awful lot of patterns to my queue thanks to the projects that I've seen. I haven't got too involved in chattering on the chatter thread, leaving it to you guys. Partly for logistics, in that when I come to do random number generation, it's going to be easier if none of my stuff's in there. So that's the reason I'm not chattering. It's not that I'm not interesting. I am going through and loving all the posts. I'm leaving it for you guys to chatter amongst yourselves, because I do enough talking. You don't need more of this. Yeah, you guys are just putting some lovely things together. So a huge thank you to everyone who's taking part. I hope you're enjoying it. Just a thought, actually. My little stash acquisition that I've just shown was going out to Anita of a bit of fibre, Gaga Knits. You're not meant to eat nut yarn, Leslie. It's delicious, but you're not meant to eat it. Sorry. Who is on a yarn diet this year. She's taking part in the knit along, and she said she was looking forward to my trip to Unravel because she wants to just kind of sniff the fumes. So I hope you like what I bought, Anita. So, just thank you to everyone. I hope you're having a good month. Next month I hope to get quite a bit of knitting done, and that reminds me, I have another project to show you which is a work in progress. I shall return. Right, I said last month I was going to make the Janelle or Janelle from Top Down Crochet Sweaters by Dora Ohrenstein, and I have started it. I haven't done a great deal, but I have started it. I can't remember why I've got all those stitch markers. I think it's to keep a count of the numbers of stitches so I can make sure I'm on track. But here it is so far. As you can see, I've just started the yoke. And here it is. Now the stitch is inside out, that's better. It's a linked treble stitch, which makes it look like little rows of Tunisian crochet going perpendicular to the rows. So I'm liking that. It's an unusual texture, which I do like. The yarn is some Noro that I got when a local yarn shop closed down a couple of years ago. So this is Noro Silk Garden Sock, and it's in the colourway S267. So you can see very sensible colours for me. Bit of a contrast to the pinks. Browns, greys. This is a kind of something I could wear whilst going to visit families for my work, that kind of thing. So quite sensible. And at the risk of going totally off brand, I think I have enough to make the whole thing in one colour. I can only apologise for letting you all down. So that's started. Hadn't got very far because I was working on the baby blanket, which was very well received. I gave it to the dad-to-be and he was very happy with it, so I'm really pleased about that. The other thing I forgot to say about that, it was the first time I had used a different needle. I've bought a couple of fixed circulars of different brands to try them out, and that blanket was made with higher sharps, and they are, aren't they? I don't dislike them. Among my favourite needles are my Addy lace needles, which are also very sharp. But yes, that was the first time using those and I was pleased with them. Nice smooth operation, good cable, so yep, liking those. I've heard the steels are better because they're not as pointy. I guess it depends also what yarn you're using, but I quite like those needles. So the book I bought, Knitting Outside the Box by Bristol Ivy. Some really unusual constructions in here, and that's kind of the point of it. So I haven't, a lot of text as well, I haven't read it all yet, but I mean, for example, that shawl, which is fabulous, is knitted in a kind of modular fashion in all different directions, which will make it, for me, a more interesting knit. So I'll have to give one or two of those a go. This is going to be my year of the shawl. Having made the big yellow-green thing that I quite often wear, the big Faroese, I find that I use it a lot, so I'm going to make more shawls this year. I say that, I mean, I make plans and it all goes to pot, doesn't it? But we'll try. And as I said, when I got home yesterday, the latest Pom Pom Quarterly had arrived. Haven't really had a chance to look through it yet, but there's a very nice colourwork sweater. And lots of good stuff in here. Again, it's about texture. So some nice things. So I'll have a go through here, have a look through, and see what gorgeousness. These mitts are actually crocheted, but I quite like those. So lots of stuff to look at, and which I will do. Oh, nice hat. Very nice hat. That is the Sweet Fern by Liza Laird and Kate Madden. So, very nice hat. So lots of things to work on. Next month I have got to have a wisdom tooth out under a general anaesthetic. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to happen sort of middle of the month. I'm then going to take a week off. Not that I expect a long recovery, but I do anticipate being fairly bruised, and I don't really want to turn up at the local crematorium looking like I've done several rounds in a boxing ring. So I'm going to take a few days off just to get the bruising down, and also if it's then quite uncomfortable I have a chance to rest it. So I'm hoping to get a fair bit of knitting done during that time. So hopefully at the end of next month there'll be lots of lovely stuff to show you. But whatever you're doing, and I hope none of you are having a wisdom tooth out under a general anaesthetic, I hope you all have a really great month. The sun has started to shine here. If you're in the States under the polar vortex, I hope the weather improves for you soon. If you're in the southern hemisphere, I hope that autumn is going well for you. And just have a great time whatever you're doing. I hope you're able to craft and to have time for the things that bring you joy. Thanks so much for everything. Take care. Bye bye.